Most people think the first military four-wheel drive vehicle was the Willys MB, but that's not entirely true. Back in 1936, 5 years before the Jeep, there was already a small vehicle in Japan that could drive through the swamps of Manchuria, across the deserts of China, into the open steppes where temperatures dropped to -40. And what's interesting, it was actually used in war. But almost no one knows about it. The whole world knows the Willys MB. They know the Volkswagen Kübelwagen, but not this one. It's called the Kurogane Type 95, and it's one of the first mass-produced four-wheel drive military vehicles in the world. Let's start with the name, Kurogane. In Japanese, it means black iron, an old word for iron itself, hard, unbreakable, no decoration. The company behind it started with three-wheeled machines and small gasoline engines. Not cars, not military vehicles. Just simple working machines for people who needed reliability, not beauty, and that became their greatest strength. In the early 1930s, the Japanese army ran into a problem. In Manchuria, across vast areas with no roads, extreme cold, and rough terrain, they needed vehicles. But the ones they had, American Ford and Chevrolet models, Japanese trucks, motorcycles with sidecars, just couldn't handle it. With two-driven wheels, you don't get far in snow or mud. The solution was obvious. They needed four-wheel drive. But at that point, Japan had never built anything like it. 1934. The Army issues a requirement, a light reconnaissance vehicle with four-wheel drive, and brings together a group of companies, including Toyota and several others, to develop a prototype. But the key person in this story is Tetsuji Makita, an engineer at Nihon Ninenki, one of the first automotive engineers in Japan, who had been working since the 1920s. A man who understood engines better than most engineers in the country at the time. The task in front of him seemed almost impossible. Japan's industry was far behind the US and Europe, limited resources, few factories, even less experience. The Army wanted 5,000 vehicles, but there was no production line and no way to build one. Makita chose a different path. Instead of something complex, keep it as simple as possible. Instead of liquid cooling, which required clean water, air cooling. In Manchuria, clean water was scarce. Cold, on the other hand, was everywhere. The engine came from something the company already made. A motorcycle unit, a V-twin, about 33 horsepower, air-cooled. Simple, reliable, fixable anywhere. 1935. The prototype is ready. By 1936, production begins. The Japanese Army got what it needed, and the world, without realizing it, got one of the first mass-produced four-wheel drive military vehicles. Let's pause for a second and understand what this actually meant. 1936. The Willys MB, the legendary American Jeep, wouldn't appear until 1941. The Volkswagen Kübelwagen, 1940. The Daimler Dingo, also 1940. The GA's 61, 1938. And the Kurogane Type 95 was already driving, off-road, with four-wheel drive, 5 years before the Jeep. Soldiers gave it two nicknames. The first, Yonki. In Japanese, it simply means four-wheel drive, short and to the point. The second, Daruma, a traditional Japanese doll that doesn't fall over. A simple joke about the rounded shape of the body, but also a sign of respect. Technically, the vehicle looked like this. Just over 3 meters long, 3 seats, 2 in the front, 1 in the back. An engine of about 1.3 to 1.4 liters, 33 horsepower. A top speed of around 75 kilometers per hour. Independent front suspension, which at the time was a real engineering solution, not something taken for granted. And a four-wheel drive system with a transfer case to engage the front axle. On the hood, the 5-point star of the Imperial Japanese Army. 1939. The Mongolian Steppe. The Khalkhin-Gol River. Japanese and Soviet forces collide in one of the most intense border conflicts before World War II. The Japanese call it the Nomonhan Incident. The Soviets, the Battle of Khalkhin-Gol. For both sides, it was short but extremely brutal. This is where the Kurogane Type 95 first enters real combat. On the Soviet side, a young general is in command, Georgy Zhukov, the same man who would later become one of the key commanders of World War II. Soviet tanks, aircraft, artillery, all of it crashes down on Japanese positions. The Japanese did not expect this scale, and the small Kurogane moves between positions. Reconnaissance, communication, delivering orders, evacuating wounded officers. In conditions where there are no roads at all, it goes where other vehicles get stuck. The Japanese army lost that battle, but the Type 95 did its job. After No Man's Land, the vehicle continues. China, Burma, the Philippines. Later, in a four-door version, it becomes a staff car for senior Army and naval officers. And here's a fact not many people know. Because of its small size and light weight, it could be transported in military gliders. Japanese paratroopers, Teishin, sometimes took it with them into airborne operations. The vehicle would roll out of the glider and go straight into reconnaissance. And this is where the story gets strange. Japan built one of the first mass-produced four-wheel drive vehicles, but never fully used that advantage. Why? Because the Army never fully transitioned to motorization. Most units still relied on bicycles, horses, and infantry. The Type 95 was built by hand, without a production line. Over 8 years, around 700 vehicles. For comparison, the Americans produced over 600,000 Jeeps. But that doesn't take away from what Kurogane achieved. It appeared at a time when the world still thought four-wheel drive belonged to tractors and heavy machinery, that a light vehicle and off-road capability didn't go together. Japanese engineers proved the opposite. And they did it in a country where the automotive industry was only just beginning. No experience, no examples to copy. Almost from scratch. 1944. Production stops. Japan shifts all resources to the Navy and aviation. The Type 95 is no longer built. After the war, almost all of them disappear. The metal is scrapped. Trophies are taken apart. Time passes. Today, only a handful of Kurogane Type 95 remain. 1 in Japan, in an automotive museum. 1 in Russia. 1 in the United States. Another was found in 2013 in a repair shop in Kyoto. It had been sitting there for over 60 years. The owner didn't even know what it was. Then an enthusiast stepped in, Masahiko Kobayashi. He raised money through crowdfunding, around $100,000, and restored it. Now it stands in a museum, and it can move again. One of the very few Type 95s still running. A machine that came 5 years before the Jeep. That drove through Manchuria, Mongolia, China, and Burma. That went into combat from a glider, and one that was almost forgotten. There's a rule in the history of technology. The first isn't always the one people remember. People remember the ones who won, whose armies prevailed, whose countries grew stronger, and whose machines appeared at the right moment. The Kurogane Type 95 was there early, but Japan lost the war, few vehicles survived, even fewer records. And the world simply never learned about it. But the fact remains, 1936, Tokyo. A small company called Black Iron built a vehicle by hand, something no one else in the world had made yet. And it worked. What lesser-known vehicle would you like to hear about next? Let me know in the comments and subscribe so you don't miss the next story.